From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aylia Batool. A new study says Americans are paying almost the entire cost of tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. This and more on today's show, so stay tuned. The United States has approved its first sale of Venezuelan oil after the violent capture of the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, on January 3rd. The deal is now facing strong criticism in Washington. The oil sale, worth approximately $250 million, went to Vital, a global energy trading firm. The Financial Times reports that a senior Vital trader involved in securing the deal was also a major donor to President Donald Trump's 2024 election campaign. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy says the deal is fundamentally corrupt, arguing that the company gained special access because of political donations, not open competition. The Washington Post reports that other U.S. investors are also positioned to profit from Venezuelan oil, especially refineries that can handle heavy crude. Senator Cory Booker said proceeds from the oil sale are being held in Qatar and warns that this raises serious concerns about transparency, accountability, and abuse of power. On January 3rd, the U.S. carried out a violent military operation in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, and kidnapped Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, killing at least 75 people in the process. Maduro and Flores were flown out of Venezuela and taken to the U.S. to face criminal charges, including those related to narcotics and terrorism. Lawmakers and prosecutors are sharply criticizing President Donald Trump after he sent a threatening letter to Norway's prime minister. In it, Trump links his renewed push for the U.S. to take over Greenland to not receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, saying the move freed him from focusing solely on peace. Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre clarified that the prize is decided by an independent committee. Democrats on the House Foreign Affairs Committee says the letter reflects personal grievance, not policy. They warn that it risks turning the United States into a global pariah and undermining alliances such as NATO. Several senators have described the message as unhinged and dangerous. Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy says Trump's recent behavior raises concerns about judgment and could drag the U.S. into conflict with allies. New Jersey Senator Andy Kim has called the letter embarrassing and harmful to Washington's standing. Others questioned whether Republicans and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are willing to challenge Trump. Calls for an investigation are growing after a third detainee died in less than 2 months at a Texas U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, detention facility. The latest death is that of 36-year-old Victor Manuel Diaz, who was detained by ICE in Minneapolis and transferred to the Fort Bliss, Texas facility, which is one of the country's largest. Contract guards found him unconscious in his cell on January 14th. He later was pronounced dead. ICE has described the case as a presumed suicide, but officials say the cause of death is still under investigation. Diaz's death follows 2 earlier cases. Texas authorities are preparing to classify the death of Geraldo Lunes Campos as a homicide, citing asphyxia. Another detainee, Francisco Gaspar Andres, died last month at a hospital. Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan has demanded a full and transparent investigation. Texas Congresswoman Veronica Escobar has called for the facility to be shut down, citing profit-driven management and repeated violations of federal detention standards. A new study says Americans are paying almost the entire cost of tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. According to a report released by the Germany-based Kiel Institute for World Economy, approximately 96% of the tariff burden is passed on to U.S. importers and consumers. Foreign exporters absorb only around 4%. The institute said this runs counter to repeated claims by the Trump administration that tariffs are paid by other countries. It projects U.S. tariff revenues to rise by approximately $200 billion in a year. Trump has claimed that tariffs brought in massive revenues and helped control inflation. The report disputes that claim, saying that tariffs function like a consumption tax on imported goods. As a result, consumers face higher prices and fewer choices, while American companies see tighter profit margins. Exporting countries sell less and are pushed to seek new markets. The analysis reviewed more than 25 million shipment records worth approximately $4 trillion. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, has raised objections to new admissions guidance at Harvard College. The policy limits what alumni interviewers can write about applicants. In a letter to Harvard President Alan Garber, the historic civil rights group said the changes are unlawful and discriminatory. Under the updated rules, interviewers are barred from mentioning an applicant's race or ethnicity. They are also discouraged from referring to religion, languages spoken, or involvement in racial organizations. Instead, they are told to use vague terms such as affinity group or risk having their reports rejected. The NAACP's Legal Defense Fund says the policy is not required by the 2023 United States Supreme Court ruling that ended affirmative action. While that decision struck down race-based admissions policies, it allowed universities to consider how race has shaped an applicant's personal experiences. The group warns the new rules may violate the Civil Rights Act by disproportionately censoring the stories of Black, Latino, Asian, immigrant applicants who are more likely to write about race and discrimination. Harvard has not publicly responded, but admissions officials say the changes are meant to show compliance with the law. Authorities are investigating Islamophobic and violent graffiti discovered at a public high school in Maryland. The graffiti at Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda included abusive language targeting Muslims, a call for violence against Palestinians, and a Star of David painted on a school wall. School officials say the messages were removed, and police have launched an inquiry to identify those responsible. The incident has raised concerns about student safety and the impact of hate speech on young people. Education officials say they are taking steps to reassure families and prevent further incidents. The Maryland chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, says the graffiti was deeply troubling and created a hostile environment for Muslim students. CARE Maryland Director Zainab Chaudhry says vandalism promoting hate or violence is not protected free speech and has called for a full investigation and accountability. The Montgomery County Muslim Council also condemns the act, calling on authorities to ensure that schools remain safe spaces for all children, regardless of faith or identity. Oscar-winning composer A.R. Rahman has triggered a sharp debate on Islamophobia in India's film industry. Details coming up after the break. Story number 8, Palestinian deaths. Welcome back. Hospitals in Gaza have recorded 1 new death and 7 injuries in the past 24 hours. On Sunday, Israeli soldiers killed at least 3 Palestinians across Gaza, despite a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that went into effect on October 10th. Since then, Israeli soldiers have killed at least 466 people and injured 1,294. Another 713 bodies were recovered from debris. Meanwhile, 7-month-old infant Shanta Abu Jarad from Gaza City died from severe cold, bringing winter-related child deaths to 9. Families continue to live in tents in overcrowded shelters without heating, blankets, or warm clothing, as Israel continues to block life-saving aid. Israeli forces have also demolished the East Jerusalem headquarters of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA. Israel's extreme right-wing National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, accompanied by Jerusalem Deputy Mayor Aylia supervised the raid. In Gaza, most of the region's 2.2 million residents depend on UNRWA for food, shelter, healthcare, and education. Israel's genocide in Gaza has killed at least 71,551 Palestinians, with 171,372 wounded since October 7, 2023, according to medical sources. A fast-spreading respiratory virus is killing Palestinians in Gaza and pushing the fragile health system closer to collapse, as Israel continues to block or limit life-saving humanitarian aid and supplies to the region. Mohammad Abu Salmiya, medical director of Al-Shifa Medical Complex, told Anadolu News Agency that hospitals are recording deaths linked to the outbreak. The virus is targeting mostly children, the elderly, and patients with chronic illnesses. Abu Salmiya says the virus, believed to be related to influenza or coronavirus, is spreading rapidly due to malnutrition, prolonged trauma, and the near absence of vaccinations. Patients are suffering high fever, severe body pain, headaches, and vomiting, with many cases turning into acute pneumonia. Conditions are especially deadly for displaced families living in overcrowded tents. Abu Salmiya says Gaza's hospitals lack basic items such as antibiotics and sterile gauze, as well as cancer drugs. Dialysis and mental health treatments are also largely unavailable, while approximately 70% of medical laboratories are no longer functioning. Abu Salmiya says Israel is denying entry to life-saving medications and equipment, while non-essential items such as soft drinks, snacks, and mobile phones are allowed in. The death toll from a massive fire at a shopping center in Pakistan's largest city, Karachi, has climbed to 26. GeoNews reports that at least 73 people remain missing as rescue teams continue to clear debris at the Gul Plaza shopping mall. Officials say the figure could rise as more areas of the buildings are accessed. The provincial Sindh government has set up a help desk to collect information from families searching for loved ones. The fire broke out late Saturday night at the multi-story shopping center on a busy commercial artery. Flames burned for more than 24 hours, slowing rescue efforts in the congested area. Karachi Metropolitan Corporation officials say firefighting operations are complete and cooling work is underway. However, they warn that decades-old structure is unstable, forcing rescuers to proceed carefully. The mall houses approximately 1,200 shops selling clothing, electronics, and household goods. Syrian authorities say they have recaptured most ISIS prisoners who were recently released from a jail in northeastern Syria. The Interior Ministry says 81 of the 120 ISIS detainees freed from a prison in al-Shaddadi in Hasakah province have been arrested again. They had escaped from the prison after fierce fighting between the Syrian army and Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, also known as SDF. Search operations are continuing to track down the remaining suspects. According to the ministry, the Syrian army is carrying out wide search and sweep operations in and around town. The development comes days after President Ahmed al-Shara announced a ceasefire and an agreement to integrate the SDF into state institutions. But despite the ceasefire, fighting erupted in the region. Under the deal, SDF forces are to withdraw from areas east of the Euphrates River and hand over control of Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor to the Syrian state. The International Criminal Court, or ICC, says it has found evidence of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Sudan's Darfur region. Briefing the UN Security Council, ICC Deputy Prosecutor Nazhat Shamim Khan said the court reviewed video, audio, and satellite data. She said the crimes followed a familiar pattern, including killings, mistreatment, and sexual violence, allegedly carried out during a siege by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. Khan said abuses seen in Al-Jinia in 2023 had reappeared in Al-Fashir in 2025, calling sexual violence a weapon of war. She also cited a recent conviction as a milestone for gender-based persecution cases. Khan delivered her remarks remotely after the United States denied her a visa. Several council members voiced concern, while Washington defended the move and repeated its objections to the court's jurisdiction. Oscar-winning composer A.R. Rahman has triggered a sharp debate on Islamophobia in India's film industry. In a recent interview, he said he lost work because of communal bias in India's film industry. Rahman did not name projects, but said religious considerations had, at times, affected professional opportunities. Hindu nationalist voices accused him of damaging Bollywood's image and questioned his motives. The comments carried weight because of Rahman's stature. For decades, his music has crossed language and religious lines. He won global acclaim, including Oscars for his work on the critically acclaimed 2008 British Indian film Slumdog Millionaire. His statement has reopened scrutiny of the climate-facing Muslim artists. Many speak of online harassment, boycott calls, and quiet exclusion. Industry insiders say producers are increasingly risk-averse, weighing potential backlash alongside creative merit. Supporters argue that Rahman voiced a lived reality. Analysts say the episode underscores how discussions of Islamophobia remain deeply contested in India's public space. A global study is testing whether a simple finger prick blood test can help detect Alzheimer's disease at an early stage. BBC reports that the trial, known as BioHermes 002, is being led by the Global Alzheimer's Platform Foundation with support from UK-based medical charity LifeArc. It involves 1,000 volunteers aged 60 and older in the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada. Researchers are studying 3 proteins found in blood that are linked to Alzheimer's. By measuring their levels, scientists hope to identify people at risk long before symptoms appear. Experts say harmful proteins such as amyloid and tau can build up in the brain up to 15 years before memory loss begins. Participants also will undergo PET brain scans or spinal fluid tests, which are costly and invasive. Researchers believe a blood test could make early diagnosis faster and more widely available. So far, 883 volunteers have joined the trial. Results are expected by 2028. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.